If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is the Thing Generational Wealth Podcast with your host, Amir Estimo. So this week I was thinking, I don't know if I've been as, transparent on when to expect the podcast. My goal is to release a podcast every Monday and Friday, and to at least bring you, value. So I really want to make it a point of emphasis that from this point forward, we're looking to record the podcast. You probably get a podcast at least every Monday. And I realized I never even recorded a trailer for this podcast because it's progress, not perfection. So I didn't think about that. But I mean, that's something probably, I guess, it's never too late to do that. But the whole point is I want to be able to bring value as much as possible so I can start bringing some guests on the podcast that could be able to, just give their insights on, their story, be able to tell their story. I know the podcast thing, Generational Wealth, I just want to be able to have a conversation around generational wealth with, people I bring on the podcast. So the goal is to start bringing people on here. So I'm looking to bring a guest on here really soon. He's a local, he's here in the Metroplex, Dallas Metroplex area. So be bringing him here eventually. So that should be really soon. So like I said, the goal is every Monday and Friday is to release a new podcast every Monday and Friday. So if I don't do it that week, Monday and Friday, you'll at least be able to expect it at least Monday. So that's that. So you guys know my goal is to be as consistent as possible this year and bringing in value and not just, just be able to come and ramble on, but just really truly be able to bring value. Because it's almost like you're talking, it's not almost, I think it is. It's like you're talking to yourself and you don't realize there's other people that actually listen. I mean, I heard this before on another podcast, and I actually find myself recording podcasts, and I think the same thing too. So it's pretty cool. So we'll see. But I'm very excited about that. Just to at least be able to bring that consistency twice a week, Monday, Friday, be able to look out for the new podcast. That's that. Okay. So I just finished reading this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. I actually listened to it on Audible. This book, I had read it the first time, and listening to it Audible, this book is probably, I would highly recommend this book because it really makes you think of that one thing you have to do. It's called The One Thing, if I didn't mention that already, by Gary Keller. So he was given an insight. The opening of the book, he said, he was talking about how in June 7th, 1991, how the movie City Slickers was released. And in the movie, there was two characters, Billy Crystal and I think Jack Lantern. I'm not 100% sure the name, but I think he passed away. But Jack Lantern's character, which was Curly, and then Billy Crystal's character, which was Mitch. So Curly tells Mitch apparently throughout the movie, I don't know if I ever saw the movie. Maybe it's something you check out. But anyways, and the one thing Gary Keller says, he was giving an account about the movie, and then Curly and Mitch were not getting along throughout the whole movie, so they both left to go look for stray cattle. As they're riding their horses, Curly yields his horse, and then Mitch, he looks at Mitch and he says, Mitch, do you know what the key to life? Mitch says no, and he holds his finger. And Mitch says, your finger? He says, no, one thing. Then Mitch says to Curly, one thing, how do I know? He said, that's for you to find out. And think about it, it is about that one thing. So, because you can find yourself in a day having so much going on. Let's say you have kids, you gotta wake up, get your kids to school, get everybody breakfast, yeah, yeah. The next thing you know, you got so much going on throughout that day. In life itself, especially if you have a corporate job, you got to go to work. You get there, you got emails to answer, you got projects, you got deadlines. So it always seems chaotic. But if we were to just stop, and then there was a question Gary Keller kept repeating. He kept repeating, what is the one thing I can do by doing such will make everything else easier or unnecessary? And he calls this the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do by doing such will make everything easier or unnecessary? And he's repeated this question throughout the book. Because the whole premise, it's like this whole, when you really think about it, it's like this swallow a frog mentality. Work on your highest priority first. But how many of us really do that, right? Not many of us really work because everything is always chaotic. Getting kids to school, getting to work, come home, etc. Everything seems chaotic. But if we would stop and ask ourselves the focusing question, what is the one thing I can do by doing such will make everything else easier or unnecessary? That's for you to figure out what's your one thing. And he talks about how Jerry Seinfeld in the book, I guess he was mentoring this. There was another guy he was into. I can't remember this guy's name, but he was into comedy. So he stopped. He got a chance. He ran to Jerry Seinfeld, and he says, "Jerry, why are you so good?" And Jerry Seinfeld says, "Because," he says, "I work on one thing, and that's writing jokes every single day." So Jerry Seinfeld's one thing is writing jokes every day, and he time blocks it. And that's another thing Gary Keller talks about, and he made it important in later on in the book, where he talks about time blocking, like how you have to protect your time block. And when you do your time block usually consists of your one thing, whatever that one thing is for you. And you could apply this to anything in your life. You could apply it to health. You could apply it to business. You could apply it to job, your relationships with your kids, your marriage, etc. Whatever, any phase of your life, financial, any phase in your life, you can always ask that question. What is the one thing I can do by doing such will make everything else easier or unnecessary? There was actually even a part in the book where he was breaking it down. And I think this is the chapter on, I want to say, priority. And in this chapter, he breaks it down and he says you have a 5-year goal. What's the one thing I can do to stay on track? And he broke it down 5 years. And then let's break it down. I'm going to break it all the way down. Let me skip it all the way down to the beginning. So he says, what's the one thing I can do right now to stay on track on my daily goal? What's the one thing I can do daily to stay on track for my weekly goal? What's the one thing I can do weekly to stay on track for my monthly goal? What's the one thing I can do monthly to stay on track for my yearly goal? What's the one thing I can do yearly to stay on track my 5 year goal? What's the one thing I can do 5 years to stay on track to my Sunday goal? And Gary Keller broke it down just like that. And he says, you really can't just skip from Sunday to right now without having all these steps. Because if you take your one thing, you break it down to all these steps, then you know what to do. But if you don't, you leave too much, you leave too much unclear, basically. So I really suggest this book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. Very good book. It has a lot of, to me, I'm going to take what I listen to on Audible, and I'm going to put into action. To me, this year is more about action than inaction. You learn when you take action. You don't learn when you don't. So I really, 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 really thank you guys, wherever you guys at, listening to this podcast, taking the time to listen to it. There's a million other podcasts you could be listening to right now that you probably would have found more valuable. I just wanted to share just that snippet of what I learned. So go listen to this book, listen, read, buy hard copy, The One Thing by Gary Keller. So I think this is a book that's good for time management. If you're struggling with time management, and I know I do, this is a book that really would help, that's going to help you. I also recommend, again, I've been talking about this book, two more books I recommend, but the one I've been talking about lately, Atomic Habits by James Clear, highly recommend. Also, read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So think about it, habits, time management. If this is what you're struggling with, these are 3 books I recommend. So till next time, what should everybody thinking? Generational wealth. All right, appreciate y'all and have a good day, folks.